Let's go back to the Sconset Beach project, because there are a lot of intertwined issues. You mentioned several people who have an interest in seeing how that plays out. It's not just the homeowners, but it's the town from the perspective of providing services like water and sewer. It's the road, it's the access to the houses further up Baxter Road, which are still protected. And yet you have this sort of overwhelming body of scientific evidence and opinion that if you do something, anything out there along the beach, somebody's going to get hurt. Maybe those houses will be protected for some period of time, but somebody else downstream or upstream is going to get hurt. How is that being factored into the discussions?
Personally, I've tried to stay away from the science because, well, I really don't think it's our job, number one. I think it's the Concom's job. So my number one priority has been, I feel a great sense of urgency. I think there's no question that if we have another storm season like last year, that the road will be gone. And then the town will have obligations of probably at least $10 million, maybe closer to 20. But whatever, they'll be significant.
Big number.
Yeah. And of course we'll be operating under a great, an emergency situation. So my goal has been to allow the SBPF, who are now really our partners, to have their day in court sooner rather than later. So that if the Concom, based on the science, says no tomorrow, that's okay. I mean, I'm fine with that. But I don't want them to say no in middle of November when it's too late to do anything about this winter. And not everybody, unfortunately, not everybody seems to share the sense of urgency that I think we should be sharing. Setting aside what the science may say. And the problem, I think, with the science is that although science, you would think, would have a definitive answer, even the scientists don't necessarily agree on what the science says. And again, that's what Concom's job is. I don't envy them their job, but that's what they're supposed to do.
Isn't, though, one of the problems with to go back to your point about the sense of urgency and the fact that you've got so many people involved, there needs to be a leader who's sort of coordinating all these things, not necessarily directing them, but coordinating them. Does there not?
You mean on the town side?
On the town side, to make sure that the responses, if not, are timely, if not, not satisfying to everybody. At least that the day in court happens in a broad sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, yes.
And then, whether it's the public works for the sewers or the water department or, again, public works for the road and so forth, and the Concom and the Board of Selectmen and everybody there, if they're not marching to the same drum at more or less the same speed, it becomes a real issue, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think you've identified a big part of the problem. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a lack of leadership. It's more a lack of coordination, and it's partly caused by the fact that we're dealing with circumstances that I don't think we've ever dealt with before. I mean, on the one hand, Libby and Andrew and Kara are preparing what do we do if the road caves in? That is relatively easy. But do
the utilities run it right up the middle of the road? Do you know?
I think one is on one side and the other is on the other. I don't know. I can't remember which is which. But the complicated thing is with the emergency project that we are partners with the SBPF, for lack of a better term. It's very, very complex because in some respects we're their partners, but in other respects, while we're being partners, we're also simultaneously negotiating different aspects of the partnership, and so I think it's led to a great deal of confusion, and it has slowed the whole process down. We haven't had a black and white agreement from day one that we've moved forward with. Right. It's frequently been tweaked, and circumstances have changed a little, and the timing as the weeks and months have gone by, the timing has changed to the point where the plan has changed, and now we have to sort of the Concom is almost starting over again. I think this week, later today, they're going to be reviewing a different proposal from what they started with several months ago.
Which they never issued a decision on that, did they?
No. I believe the the revetment plan is being suspended, whatever that means. I don't believe it's being withdrawn. It's either being suspended or modified by the new proposal, which is which I believe is pretty significantly sized geotubes. So we'll see. I just, like I say, nothing would make me happier than to have the Concom review the evidence, close the hearing, and make a determination while there's still time for the SPPF to move ahead if the determination is positive. If it's not, so be it. But I think that needs to happen fast.
If you had one wish that you could get granted on that or any other matter related to the town, what would that be?
Changing the form of government. I think probably that means moving away from town meeting. I just don't think that government can be responsive to the kinds of problems we have now.
You look at Washington, though. But it's interesting. I had a conversation with the town council the other day about a lot of things, but one of them he mentioned was that because of the grant, there's something called grant assurances, which you're going to have to look at as a member of the Board of Selectmen shortly, because they have to be signed every once in a while. And they're basically the conditions that the state and the federal government place on providing money to the airport.
Okay.
And they're pretty strict, and they're not negotiable. So you either, I think, agree to them or you don't, and you get money or you don't, depending on how it comes out. But we were talking about this whole budget issue, and the fact that the timing of things is poor because of the need to go to town meeting or even a special town meeting, or if you don't get to the special town meeting, you have to wait 6 months till the next one. And he said to me, I hope he doesn't mind my quoting him publicly, that the reason, because of the grant assurances, if the airport did not have an enterprise fund, it would not be subject to the town budget process. Which I thought, we're not about to suggest that we do away with the enterprise fund, but I thought it was an interesting. There is at least an option there, to deal with the whole fuel issue, which is what has been the problem for us, and which in Hyannis, because they have a town council, they can go to the town council any month they want to get their budget changed.
I don't know why we couldn't consider the possibility of getting rid of the enterprise fund. I mean,
well, we could, but I think politically, from my perspective, as long as there's a possibility that we need a subsidy from the town, it's probably smarter to stay. In the
which
process.
is why we have it in the first place.
That's right, exactly.
But there must be ways. I mean, there are certainly other municipalities that have privatized their airports, and they must have a way of dealing with periodic deficits. I mean,
I'm sure they do,
Yeah.
but I don't know how it works, except again, Hyannis has a town council system, so that Barnstable, so they can do it in their own way.
The element of town meeting that is even perhaps the most disappointing to me is I know a lot of people who used to religiously go to town meeting, and I'm sure you do too. Every night they absolutely didn't miss it, and they just have kind of given up because they didn't feel like it was worth the time, and it was too dominated by special interests, and we have to devote so much time to the very complicated zoning articles, which aren't necessarily the most interesting articles we have to deal with. So there's an awful lot of things we could do to make it better. Unfortunately, the people who make the decisions about how to change town government are the people who still go to town meeting. And they must like it, or they would, they must like it the way it is. So.
Well, we'll see what happens. I hope maybe we'll start with another town government study committee or something of that sort.
Yeah, I think next time we have to listen to them. I mean, well, maybe, like a lot of things, I think maybe they were a little before their time. That was probably 10 years ago now.
It was 5, 6,
Yeah, and I think, I think that like traffic and parking, people are going to get to the point where they're going to eventually realize that we have to do something differently.
When's your term up?
A year from April. Not that I'm counting.
Too soon. Well, mine's a year from June.
Counting.
Not that I'm counting. It's too soon to ask you if you're going to run again,
Well,
so I won't.
My official posture on People ask me all the time, am I glad I ran? My official answer right now is, I'm not sorry I ran. So, just a little different.
It is,
But,
it is.
anyway.
Bruce Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
It's fun to have you.
I'll be happy to come back whenever you feel like it. I really do want to switch positions with you someday and get behind the desk and ask you questions.
It's up to the boss.
Whenever
You
Gino.
can do that.
So,
I'd love to have you. If
That's
you,
fine
he's
with me.
happy
So,
with it.
yeah.
then
or if
you're-
not me, somebody. But I think
No,
I think you need to be on the
Mm.
couch sometime.
Okay.